sometimes you have to read between the lines to get the real story. And Russia's invasion of Ukraine is no exception to that. Trump has dropped a few hints recently. I don't know if you caught him, but what's he trying to tell us? He dropped an absolute truth bombshell that, of course, was missed. It was mocked. It was made fun of in the mainstream media. But when you start to put together all the players involved with the Ukrainian story, well, there's potentially a much different perspective out there that isn't being reported to you. So I'm going to present this for your evaluation. And I look forward to your comments. What are your thoughts on what you're about to see? Put it in the comments below. Let's get a good discourse going so that we can all exchange the ideas of what could be a very confusing and continually developing situation. My name is Justus, and I can't thank you enough for being here today. Ask you a huge favor. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do that now. Take just a few seconds. Make sure you help me to share the video, and make sure your bell is checked so you're alerted to upcoming broadcasts. Also, if you haven't gone over to restrictedrepublic.com yet to support me, that is where you put your support. And in return, I provide you something in return. That's news, unfiltered, uncensored. Lisa Haven and I, every day, giving you the information that is no longer allowed to be broadcast anywhere else. And to take advantage of that, right now we're going to give you a very special discount code FREEDOM. That's going to get you $5 a month for 2 years, plus 14 days for free. Once you go there, you'll go nowhere else for all your news that matters. But now let's get back to this broadcast. So the Ukrainian story involves many people. Hunter Biden, as all of you remember, we're going to cover just a few details of that. Donald J. Trump. And this man, not being reported on much, but heavily involved in the Ukrainian saga. And of course, Putin. Now, we've seen many perspectives of this story start to take shape in the mainstream media, and if they're reporting on it, you have to be questioning it, of course. So let's start with some facts. From GeorgeSoros.com. We must stand with Ukraine, as they stand with us. That should immediately put you on guard. I have witnessed Ukraine transform from a collapsing part of the Soviet Union to a liberal democracy and an open society. It has faced countless acts of Russian aggression, but has persisted. Brave Ukrainians are now on the front line and risking their lives in an onslaught that reminds me of the siege of Budapest in 1944 and the siege of Sarajevo in 1993. Just page up a little bit here. It is important that both the Transatlantic Alliance, the United States, Canada, the European Union, and the United Kingdom, but also other nations, do whatever it is in their power to support Ukraine. Well, that's asking for quite a bit of help from George Soros, because he views it as an existential threat. Putin's actions are a direct attack on the sovereignty of all states that were once in the Soviet Union and beyond. Russia is in clear violation of the United Nations Charter and should be held accountable. Allowing Putin to succeed on his quest will send a message across the world that nations can simply be created or dissolved by brute force. We must stand with Ukraine as they stand with us. So that's statement number one. Does that give you any cause for concern? Anytime George Soros says something, it gives me great cause for concern. So let's go a step further into this. Soros-linked mass migration lobby, U.S. must open borders to Ukrainian refugees. Resettlement group that associated here urges Biden to rebuild and streamline the refugee resettlement program to prepare for possible refugees from Ukraine. As of January 31st, the U.S. has resettled 4,362 refugees of the 125,000 permitted under the cap for fiscal 2022. As you know, George Soros has always desired open borders. The reasons is for another broadcast. But nonetheless, he's doing it again and heavily involved in Ukraine. Who else is heavily involved in Ukraine? Don't forget Hunter Biden and Burisma. Just one of many politicians, sons and daughters involved in Ukraine. And this on Investment Watch. I find it so interesting that Romney, Pelosi, Kerry, and now Biden all have children working for Ukrainian oil and gas exploration companies. Is that a coincidence? I ask you that question. I told you the facts will start to stack up very strangely here. The Ukrainian energy company was paying President Biden's son Hunter $1 million a year, cut his monthly compensation in half 2 months after his father ceased to be vice president. Coincidence? Again, asking you these questions. But Biden wasn't content to leave well enough alone in his book, his memoir he wrote. Instead, he announced having a Biden on Burisma's board was a loud and unmistakable F-U to Putin. He protests too much. Position clear? I hope it is for you now. Of course, Hunter back in the federal grand jury hearings. At least his ex-lovers are now back in the federal grand jury. I'm sure we're going to hear more, but let's take this saga a bit further. You remember Tony Bobulinski?
In late 2015, I was approached by James Gilliar, whom I had known for many years, about joining him in a deal which he said would involve the Chinese state-owned enterprise CEFC China Energy and what he called one of the most prominent families in the United States. I was informed first by Gilliar and then by Hunter Biden and by Rob Walker, who was working with the Bidens.
Hunter Biden's involvement with China. The saga continues. I promise you. I'm piecing all of this together for you. And lo and behold, what happens? Who did Biden call for help against Russia prior to their invasion of Ukraine? U.S. officials repeatedly urged China to help avert war in Ukraine. Americans presented Chinese officials with intelligence on Russia's troop buildup in hopes that President Xi Jinping would step in, but they were repeatedly rebuffed. Go into the story. The previously unreported talks between American and Chinese officials show how the Biden administration tried to use intelligence finding and diplomacy to persuade a superpower it views as a growing adversary to stop the invasion of Ukraine, and how that nation, led by President Xi Jinping, persistently sided with Russia, even as the evidence of Moscow's plans for a military offensive grew over the winter. But they came back with strong words for Biden. On the Ukraine issue, lately the U.S. has been sending weapons to Ukraine, heightening tensions, creating panic, and even hyping up the possibility of warfare. If someone keeps pouring oil on the flame while accusing others of not doing their best to put out the fire, such kind of behavior is clearly irresponsible and immoral. So now you got Soros involved in this story. You have Hunter Biden involved in this story. You have Joe Biden, and now you have China. As you start to see, the pieces aren't quite connecting. I hope in your mind. I haven't made a final determination on this, presenting you the facts as we find them so that we can each make a determination on together what's happening. But we'll go a step further, because what some may have viewed as strangely irregular, why did Russia go to Chernobyl is one of their first things they wanted to seize control of. And of course, the reports immediately filtered out. Radiation levels in Chernobyl are rising right upon Russia taking it over. Oh, come on now, guys. Do you really expect us to believe the minute his troops set foot on the ground, suddenly radiation began rising up? Or had it always been that way? Or there's more to that story also. Putin puts his spin on a conspiracy theory that Ukraine is on a path to nuclear weapons. Russian president has made arguments before, but usually as asides, not as justification for urgent actions against Ukraine. But President Vladimir Putin of Russia has a very different complaint. He is spinning out a conspiracy theory, perhaps as a pretext to seize the country in a military operation that began there early Thursday, that Ukraine and the United States are secretly plotting to put nuclear weapons back into the country. As a portion of NATO, is there a larger plan? Is there something we're unaware of? Data from the automated radiation monitoring system for the exclusion zone, which is available online, indicates that the control levels of gamma radiation, the red dots, has been exceeding at a significant number of observation points. Now, of course, that gives me great cause for concern and also makes me scratch my head. Why is this news now? Why wasn't it news before? Is the mainstream media shaping a different narrative once again to distract from what may actually be going on? Now, of course, PolitiFact jumped into the mix. Diffusing a story, Russia is targeting U.S. biological weapons labs in Ukraine invasion. There are no U.S.-run biolabs in Ukraine. According to the Department of Defense, and up here in Ukraine, there is one. But I distract. Maybe I don't understand as much as PolitiFact does, or don't know how to research. Research far better than they ever will. White House freezes Ukraine military package that includes lethal weapons. Wait now. So White House is helping Ukraine. Putin's fighting it back. They're saying there's no weapons factories, but there is. In this Congressional Research Service, of course, we were just there, right, to help remove the missiles. We weren't there to do anything else, not build bases. Of course not. Why would we want to arm Ukraine against Russia? Why would we partake in that? Well, I think we need maybe some help from somebody who has a little bit more inside knowledge. And he's given you some hints recently. So let's go to Donald Trump as we conclude this story. Trump again cozying up to Putin, praises Russian aggression as genius. This from the New York Times. Now let's keep in mind that under the Trump administration, this didn't happen. But under the Obama and Biden administration, it did. So no matter how much you try to draw the parallels there, it's obviously not true, but the mainstream media doesn't care about truth. Now, do they? As President Biden announces sanctions against Russia and warned of more if President Vladimir Putin did not withdraw his forces from Ukraine, former President Donald J. Trump on Tuesday praised Mr. Putin's aggression as genius and called the Russian leader very savvy for describing the troops aligned as the Ukrainian border as peacekeepers. Oh, then he must be the devil. He must be completely wrong. He must just be coming out there and spewing non-truths because that's what they've claimed the entire time, investigation after investigation after investigation. But yet the minute Biden takes office, all this comes to fruition. Come on now, folks. I know you're smarter than that. Now we just got to get the general American public to be smarter than that. But the article goes on. Just two more screenshots for you. Putin is now saying its independence, a large section of Ukraine. I said, how smart is that? This is from Trump. And he's going to go in and be a peacekeeper. That's the strongest peace force I've ever seen. There has been more army tanks than I've ever seen. They're going to be there to keep the peace, all right. No, but think of it. Here's a guy who's very savvy. That was the actual quote. Now, Trump has a very funny way to do tongue-in-cheek to get his message across. Do you really think that if he didn't have something else to say, he wouldn't have just said it? No, he's directly, indirectly letting you know there's obviously more to this story. Of course, if you take more direct information and you remember what he targeted during his presidency, you could piece this whole story together now. American aid to Ukraine has drawn intense scrutiny in the past. In 2019, Trump moved to block the delivery of lethal aid to Ukraine as part of an effort to pressure Ukrainian President Zelensky to announce an investigation connected to Biden's son. Zelensky made no such announcement, and the holdup triggered the first impeachment of Trump. At the time, congressional Democrats were vociferous about the importance of the U.S. providing support to the war-weary country. So I ask you the question now, is there more to this story than you are being told? Is there a different angle to be looking at this entire saga at? I guarantee you we won't look at what the mainstream media saga is. We'll do our own research, present you the facts, and allow you to come to your own conclusions. But as these pieces become clearer and easier to piece together, appears maybe a different story is taking shape here. Something maybe we've been misled on. I know that's shocking, but that's why you're at Restricted Republic, because we don't take the mainstream narrative. We take the fact-driven narrative, present it to you, and then continue to let the story develop into whatever conclusion it may end at. I hope you enjoy that. I look forward to your comments on this video. Very important to us so we can guide further broadcasts as more details become available, because you know these things never take shape in the beginning. They take months, if not years, to get to the real truth of what's going on. And Trump, well, he's just helping us with a few hints, a few breadcrumbs along the trail to truth. We love you all. Can't thank you enough for being here. Until next time, Godspeed and God bless. Justus Knight, signing out.